Hello, my name is Maritza Mills, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a new service we just launched called AWS Network Firewall. I'll start by walking us through the agenda for today's conversation. We'll start by looking at a history of firewall controls on AWS and the need for a defense in-depth approach to security. Next, I'll dig into the details of what AWS Network Firewall is and some of the benefits that it brings to your security posture. Then we'll take a look at how you can personally get started and what the current regional availability and pricing is for the service. So let's get started by looking at a history of protective controls on AWS, starting with Amazon VPC security groups. Now, Amazon VPC security groups are the foundational firewall controls on AWS. These are usually the first controls you put in place when spinning up any kind of workload in your environment. This allows you to control access to and from your EC2 hosts based on what's called 5-tuple information. So source and destination IP, source and destination port, and protocol. Even with these controls, many of our customers told us that they needed specialized security functions to protect their internet-facing web applications. Internet-facing web applications have a unique challenge in that they need to be always up and available for all traffic that is coming towards them on the internet. And so what our customers needed was the ability to do things like tell a machine-generated user from an actual human user. They also needed the ability to do things like inspect web forms for potentially malicious inputs to prevent those from being passed through to their backend. And so in 2015, we launched AWS Web Application Firewall, which provides specialized web app protection for web applications that are hosted on Amazon CloudFront, AWS Application Load Balancer, or AWS AppSync or API Gateway. At the same time, we've been working for years to protect our customers from distributed denial of service attacks, also known as DDoS attacks. These attacks are uniquely designed to hurt the availability of your system or service and make it unavailable to you or to your users. We learned while protecting our customers that there was a lot of visibility and control we could give back to our customers if we made them more publicly available. So in 2016, we launched AWS Shield and AWS Shield Advanced, which gave customers access to things like attack reports and a proactive threat response team and advanced mitigations to protect against sophisticated targeted DDoS attacks. As our customers' business grew across a growing number of accounts or VPCs, many of them told us that they needed a central way to consolidate, view, and audit these protective controls across their entire organization. And so in 2018, we launched AWS Firewall Manager, which is integrated with multiple network and application controls on AWS, giving you a central dashboard to both view and audit policy management across your entire AWS account. So this includes Amazon VPC security groups, AWS Web Application Firewall, and AWS Shield Advanced, like we've spoken about here. And today we're adding one more, which is AWS Network Firewall. AWS Network Firewall is a highly available, scalable firewall service from AWS where the infrastructure is fully managed. This firewall service allows you to apply blanket protections across your entire VPC, regardless of the application type or protocol. This means that you can inspect traffic at layers 3 through 7 of the OSI model, both at the network layer up through the application layer. And you can inspect traffic flows that are leaving or entering your VPC from any direction. And so this can be between VPC traffic, traffic that is going outbound to internet, traffic that is originating from the internet coming inbound, or traffic that is traversing AWS Direct Connect or VPN between AWS and your on-premises data centers. Let's take a look at some of the key benefits. One is that the service is fully managed. The infrastructure being fully managed by AWS means that your team gets to focus on where you want to place inspection points in your network and the security of policies that you want to apply to actually inspecting your network traffic. There's no need to provision capacity, there's no need to worry about load balancing or failover, and there's no need to worry about the maintenance and patching of servers, for example. This removes a lot of friction from your deployments, allowing you to deploy much more flexibly than you have in the past. Additionally, AWS Network Firewall provides highly customizable controls, allowing you to define allow or deny conditions based on more than just IP, port, and protocol. And then we'll look at how AWS Network Firewall is fully integrated with your existing security ecosystem, making it easy to use alongside your existing security tools. So let's look at these in a little more detail, starting with managed availability. So as a fully managed service, AWS manages the infrastructure and automatically scales out the service along with your network traffic. AWS Network Firewall can scale seamlessly upwards of 45 gigabits per second and is a highly available zonal firewall that provides you 4 nines of availability. So that's a 99.99% SLA. This removes a lot of friction from your team as far as setting up your security posture and quickly coming to compliance for any new workloads that you decide to spin up. Removing this friction actually unlocks a whole lot of new architecture options for your team. Many of our customers told us, many of you told us, that because of the burden of operating security infrastructure, many of you felt like you had to centralize all of your inspection points into 1 or 2 inspection points for your entire network. And that wasn't really the way that you wanted to architect. Many of you told us that what you were really interested in was a more granular, reduced scope of inspection, say per VPC, per account, or at least per environment. So thinking something different for tests, something different for production, and something different for your development environments. And so Network Firewall gives you the benefit of being able to selectively choose which flows you want to inspect and where you want to put those inspection points. You have the option to either scale up to thousands of accounts, or if it's what's best for your business, you could choose to centrally inspect all traffic between these accounts using something like an AWS Transit Gateway. If you're interested in diving deeper into why you might choose to go with one particular inspection type or another, there's a related reInvent talk, Net 306, titled Which Inspection Architecture is Right for You, that spends a lot more time diving deep into the benefits and the trade-offs. Regardless of what inspection type you choose to go with or what architecture type you choose to go with, you can still maintain central visibility and audit control through our integration with AWS Firewall Manager. For those of you who might not be familiar, AWS Firewall Manager is a service that gives you one place to manage all protective controls on AWS. Again, this includes Amazon VPC security groups, AWS Web Application Firewall, AWS Shield Advanced, and now AWS Network Firewall. With AWS Firewall Manager, you can continuously manage and audit your controls across all of your accounts on AWS. This allows you to enforce protections even as new applications are created or as new accounts come online. With AWS Firewall Manager, you have one central place to view your compliance posture across your entire AWS environment. If you want to dive deeper into this service specifically, there's another related reInvent talk, SEC 320, where you can learn more about the automated remediation and the central audit capabilities. So now let's dig deeper into the fine-grained controls that you have with AWS Network Firewall. Starting with the basics, you do have the ability to control access by IP port and protocol, similar to security groups and network ACLs in your VPC today, with the main difference being that the number of IPs and CIDR ranges that you can bring scales into the tens of thousands. You also, though, now have the ability to control, for example, outbound inspection by, say, a fully qualified domain name. This means that you could create something like an allow-only rule that says only allow traffic to aws.amazon.com. Or if you wanted to wildcard that domain, which is to say, I want to allow traffic to star.amazon.com, that means that you can allow traffic to any Amazon.com website or any website that's kind of along the tree of those domains. You also have the ability to do much more general pattern matching, or also known as regular expression matching. This means that you could do things like create patterns for full URL strings, or look for specific byte sequences within a packet. Regardless, when you do find a match on a traffic pattern, you have 3 choices as to what you want to do with that traffic. You can decide to allow the traffic through, you can choose to drop suspicious or non-compliant traffic, or you could simply choose to alert on the traffic. That way that you're not really interfering with the flow, but you might still want someone on your security team to take a look at what happened. or just log it for compliance purposes. When you do choose to drop or alert on a particular type of traffic, you have the option of dropping a log that includes additional state information about the traffic that it matched to. Those logs can be sent to one of 3 destinations, including an Amazon S3 bucket, Amazon CloudWatch logs, or Amazon Kinesis Firehose. You can choose one or all 3 of these destinations depending on your preference. You also have the option, in addition to rule-specific logs, to generate and send flow logs for any traffic that's actually going through the firewall. Regardless of which logging you choose, you have the flexibility to choose one of these 3 destinations. AWS Network Firewall allows you to defend against common network threats. Using its intrusion prevention capabilities, you can perform active traffic flow inspection to catch suspicious behavior such as malware intrusion or protocol abuse. This means that you can inspect traffic behavior in addition to whether or not the source and destination are already trusted. For example, you can do things like detect protocol anomalies, such as, even though the source and destination are trusted, is there encrypted traffic trying to leave through a port that is typically reserved for unencrypted traffic? Finally, taking a look at the fact that Network Firewall is integrated with your existing security ecosystem. We'll start with the fact that you can write intrusion prevention rules using common open source rule formats, such as Snort or Suricata. This means that your team doesn't have to take the time to learn a new proprietary rule language, and you can collaborate with the broader security community on threat prevention and response. Network Firewall is also integrated with 14 security partners at launch, with more to come soon. We'll take a look at some of those security partners now. Network Firewall is integrated with security partners that you're already familiar with and probably already using today across security monitoring and security information and event management, managed threat intelligence feeds, policy management, governance, automation, and orchestration, as well as fully managed security offerings and professional services. I'll take a look at just 2 or 3 of these in more detail. You can also find more information about these partner integrations on our product page. Taking a look at one example, our integration with Cortex XSOAR, which is an automated orchestration and response integration, allows you to automatically create policy-driven responses to alerts that might happen in Network Firewall, as well as to coordinate responses across your AWS environment for any type of firewall deployment. Our CrowdStrike integration allows you to leverage CrowdStrike threat detection for proactive threat hunting. Using their Falcon platform, you can create dynamic policy updates within AWS Network Firewall, allowing for streamlined incident response and coverage of your AWS network, both at the host level and network-wide. Trend Micro is another threat intelligence integration partner that allows you to detect and block unwanted traffic at scale with no management overhead. You have easy rule deployment via the Trend Micro Cloud One console, and they provide automatic rule updates as new threat intelligence becomes available. For Trend Micro Cloud One customers, there are select threat intelligence rules already available at no additional cost. All right, so now let's take a look at how to get started with Network Firewall. As we discussed before, the first thing you're going to want to do is understand where would you like to place an inspection point in your network. For this example, we're going to look at a single VPC that has a customer subnet running a workload that needs to talk to the internet. And so the first thing that you're going to want to do is create a separate subnet that's just reserved for your firewall. This subnet could be the smallest available IP space in your network, so something like a /28 CIDR range. And the firewall itself doesn't necessarily need an IP assigned to it. What you're going to see is that we're going to put a firewall in this subnet, and then before the firewall is actually investigating or inspecting any traffic, you're going to have to make updates to your route tables within the VPC to direct flows to the firewall. So let's look at how you'll want to configure your Amazon VPC route tables. First, you'll start with your customer subnet, where you'll want to configure a route that sends traffic to the firewall for inspection anytime that traffic is leaving the subnet. And so you'll see here below, there's a 0/0 that is sending traffic to the firewall by default. Next, you'll want to create a similar route table in your firewall subnet. So once you've started sending all your traffic from the customer subnet to the firewall subnet, you're now going to want to create a additional route table for the firewall subnet that also updates its default route to send all traffic through the internet gateway. This ensures that any traffic now inspected and allowed is forwarded on to the internet gateway. Once you've done that, for any return traffic that might be coming back in response, you'll want to also make sure that you're updating a route for your internet gateway so that it's sending traffic back through the firewall. This is a simple example of a single VPC. As we discussed earlier, there are many customers who might want to do multi-VPC inspection, especially with a transit gateway. So at a very high level, we'll take a look at what that might look like. If you want to do a centralized deployment with AWS Transit Gateway, you may already have a transit gateway set up with multiple spoke VPCs like what you see pictured here. In order to add a firewall to inspect all traffic that is, for example, going between spoke VPC 1 and spoke VPC 3, you'll want to deploy a firewall into its own VPC like what we just saw, with the difference being that that VPC is going to be attached to the transit gateway. Once that VPC is attached to the transit gateway, you'll then make updates to your transit gateway route domains so that any traffic traversing the central hub is going to send traffic first to the firewall VPC for inspection before being forwarded on to its final destination. So once you've figured out where you want to deploy your firewall and how you're deploying it, you're going to want to create security policies to actually inspect your traffic. When you deploy a firewall, you get something called a firewall policy, which consists of one or more rule groups. And rule groups themselves are just logical separations of individual rules. A rule group can either be stateless, which means that it's inspecting individual packets as they pass through, or stateful, which means that it's looking at an entire flow of multiple packets and taking the full context of that flow into consideration. A policy itself can contain up to 10 rule groups, both a combination of stateless or stateful. And regardless of which type you choose, you're going to have to configure a default action. So as an example, let's say that you have a stateless policy that you've created to drop known bad IP sources. If there is still additional traffic that you do want to allow through, you might want to perform deeper inspection on that traffic by forwarding it to a stateful policy. So in this case, for any traffic that is not dropped, you'll want to configure a default action to send non-matching traffic onward to the stateful policy for further inspection. And so that was kind of a look at how you would get started deploying this to your environment. If you want to just get started right away, you'll want to visit the Amazon VPC console and just look for AWS Network Firewall in the left-hand navigation. So now let's take a look at the regional availability and pricing. Currently, Network Firewall is available in US East 1, US West 2, and EU West 1, with more regions coming very soon. Additionally, the pricing is done on a per firewall deployment hour and per gigabytes processed. There are no upfront charges, and you only pay for what you use. In addition to this, when you deploy a firewall with a NAT gateway, you receive the NAT gateway at no additional cost on a one-to-one basis, meaning that for every hour that you have your firewall deployed, you get an hour of a NAT gateway deployment included at no additional charge. And for every gigabyte processed through the firewall, you also get a gigabyte of NAT gateway included at no additional charge. You can find more examples of this on our pricing page. Okay, so let's take a review. AWS Network Firewall is a highly available security service from AWS that is part of a comprehensive defense in depth approach to your security. And so we'll review how you might have your applications architected in AWS today and the different entry points into your network, and how AWS Network Firewall complements existing security services you might already be using. Starting with a single set of EC2 hosts running in your VPC, you likely have an Amazon VPC security group that is allowing or denying traffic between hosts within your VPC. For an additional layer of protection, you may also have a network access control list that is on the subnet and is controlling traffic between subnets or that might be coming into your VPC from the internet. If you want to perform deeper inspection of that traffic or have more granular event logging and or some additional egress controls, such as egress domain filtering, you can choose to include Network Firewall as part of the inspection path for any traffic leaving or entering your VPC. Now, you might also have the applications hosted inside of your VPC hosted on Amazon CloudFront to bring it closer to your users, and to improve the performance of your web application for those users where they are. In this case, you may be using a web application firewall to protect any of the inbound traffic before it passes through to your backend. Finally, to ensure high resilience and high availability of your applications, AWS Shield and AWS Shield Advanced provides protection from distributed denial of service attacks. In addition to these network and application controls, AWS offers multiple other comprehensive security controls for things like intelligent threat detection on AWS using Amazon Guard Duty, the ability to discover and protect sensitive data using Amazon Macie, as well as the ability to centralize all these security findings and alert in AWS Security Hub. So now let's recap. AWS Network Firewall, as a highly available, scalable firewall service, removes friction from your network and security teams, allowing them to think about only the security policies that they want to apply and the inspection points that you want to put inside of your network. The rules are highly customizable so that you can accomplish goals such as segmenting your networks, for example, between, say, a PCI compliance environment versus other environments, or say a test environment from a production environment. Granular event logging, especially for things like threat correlation, so faster time to remediate if you spot suspicious behavior, as well as intrusion detection and prevention. Network Firewall is integrated with your existing security ecosystem so that you can get started right away using the same security tools that you're already using in your environment. And there are no upfront costs. You only pay for what you use. And so that's it. I want to thank you for your time, and I highly encourage you to visit some of the related reInvent talks if you want a much deeper dive into the deployment models and how this integrates with something like AWS Firewall Manager. So thank you.